powered by Reviting, streaming from the Reviting Digital Studio. It's the David Daily. Exploring frontier technology, artificial intelligence, quantum innovation, and the intersection of faith, funding, and the future. Here's your host, David Goki.
Episode 19. Welcome to the David Daily Show. Incredibly blessed and excited to be here today, where we have lots of news topics and a special guest. So if you're tuning in for the first time, please like, comment, and share. We're so blessed to have you here. Today, AI chip stocks are showing us that they're actually there's a chip stock reaction to mixed market momentum. Micron Technologies surged significantly after reporting strong profit forecasts driven by soaring demand and a tight supply for high bandwidth memory chips used in AI data centers, lifting broader chip sector sentiments. This reflects a continued confidence in AI, as well as hardware demands, and even amid macro volatility. Quite interesting. In other news, secondly, Wall Street refunds and rebounds are following the tech sell-off we saw last week on Friday. The tech sell-off happened on Friday, but futures are indicating and showing us that a rebound in major indices after prior AI-related losses, with indices like the S&P 500 and NASDAQ showing early strength this week as we head into the weekend. Analysts saw the market reaction tied to mixed earnings results and inflation expectations, including last night we saw the President of the United States come on live globally at 9 p.m. Eastern, which added to that volatility as well. Third, in global markets, under pressure on tech growth concerns, equity markets, particularly in Asia, experienced pressure as broader tech and AI investment concerns weighed on sentiment. Investors are bracing ahead of central bank decisions and reacting to uneven tech sector performance. In other news, data center expansion draws local backlash over energy use because rapid growth in AI-driven data centers across the United States has triggered pushback over electricity rates and environmental impacts, particularly in communities hosting large facilities. You may have heard last night that electricity prices will be coming down, and this is primarily fueled by the AI demand and massive investments in the United States in electricity. And this illustrates exactly how AI infrastructure and quantum needs are intersecting with public policy and utility economics. Finally, to round out our current events portion of the show, NVIDIA navigates market mood swings on AI investment narratives. NVIDIA stock also faces mixed narratives, with some perception of AI investment jitters balanced against continuing strategic positioning in next-generation infrastructure and AI compute demand. That concludes our AI news segment and our current events. And now we're going to actually move on to the next portion of the show, which I'm very excited to have a very, very special guest on the show, Neil Sahota. I'm so thankful to have you on the show. Welcome to the show, Neil. It is so great to have you here. If you don't mind just introducing yourself and sharing just a little bit about yourself so people can get familiar with yourself on the show here.
Sure. No, hey, excited to be on the show, David. Thanks for having me. So for everybody, my name is Neil Sahota. I'm the CEO of ACSI Labs and the United Nations AI Advisor. So do a lot of work. My AI journey started being part of the original IBM Watson team back in the day, ancient history, almost 15 years ago. But that was the trigger point. Watson was the computer that played Jeopardy against at the time, the two greatest champions. And since then, I've been working with organizations around the world to not just advance the technology, but advance the use of AI. And that means, the whole ecosystem model from startup to big company, as well as my work with the United Nations, which is AI for Good. How can we use AI to improve, conditions for people in society?
Absolutely love that. It's so good to have you on this segment of the show, which is called Funding, Faith, and Future Tech. I couldn't be more thankful to have you here. So we'll go right into the funding aspect and just say, okay, so early stage investing. In our pre-show, we talked a little bit about this. Tell us a little bit about your experience in early stage investing into businesses and how'd you get started?
Well, it was a natural progression. Back in my Watson days, one of the things we realized really quickly, right? Because I was advocating an ecosystem model. It's not just about a tech stack and APIs and an SDK. This is truly a game changer. We have to help business people understand the capabilities and how they can build new products, new business units, new ventures. And what we learned very quickly is that the most innovative ideas actually came from entrepreneurs. You're a big company, I don't mean any disrespect, but you've had a lot of success and you kind of want to protect that. So your appetite for a lot of change, right? Trying to fix something that's not broken, so to speak, is not as strong as an entrepreneur. And so they were really focused on what's the better way of doing things. And we realized they need a leg up. We started a $100 million fund at IBM to actually support that. And of course, as the technology grew and you saw more uses of AI permeate, you started seeing more angel syndicates as well as early stage VC funds start jumping into the pool. But they also quickly learned that AI is a completely different computing model. This is not software, right? You don't program real AI. And so that's a struggle because most of us are used to traditional computing, David. And so that became a thing is then how do I know if something is really AI and how do I know if the AI is actually effective? And that kind of opened Pandora's box, if you will.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's so interesting. I was at Microsoft for 10 years and we've got about 20 people live streaming right now. So welcome to the show. So great to have you here, both on Neil's LinkedIn, my own, as well as 10 other platforms simultaneously. And this idea of corporate entrepreneurship can be really beautiful, especially when you have executive buy-in. And of course, the benefit of having something like IBM Watson be built inside of IBM is, well, guess what? Daddy's got big pockets, right? So you can always go back to daddy and ask for more money. But sometimes that money runs out because unlike traditional startups, you kind of have unlimited runway to a degree. So in terms of the implementation side and the funding side, just to keep things on topic, how do you see that applying to corporate entrepreneurs who might be considering either raising a round of an angel early, super early, maybe even pre-seed stage with family and friends, or maybe their own capital? They're thinking about selling some stock and building their own thing. How do you recommend, people who are just getting started into maybe their own idea coming from a corporate entrepreneurship world?
It's a great question. And, I'll be a little self-serving here. I apologize, but I just
Please.
recently released a book called The AI Activation Code. And it actually talks about, it's a very tactical playbook for people, but it actually talks about the 4 stages we go through on our journey. And that's part of the first, first 2 stages is actually answer that very question, David. So at the end of the day, I know there's still a lot of hype with AI, but if you got an idea and you're trying to pursue something, don't go out and try and sell yourself as an AI company, right? If you're doing something in healthcare, doing something in financial services, you're a financial services company or a healthcare company. AI is just a tool to be used, and what you really want to show is you're solving a real problem. It's all the fundamentals. You're solving a real problem. You're creating an unfair advantage. AI might be a driver to help you do that, but at the end of the day, you have to have the right domain expertise.
Right.
Because we don't program AI, we teach it. And that's one of the things I talk about in the book is I know we're used to software and everybody's looking for the box.
Right.
Well, you don't program AI. Think of AI as not as software. Think of it as a high energy intern.
Right.
So it's ready to do whatever kind of work you wanted to do, but you have to teach it first. And so if you're going to be a successful startup company using AI, you have to have that domain expertise to teach the AI system. So if you're going to go in and say, hey, I built a really cool tool to help, private equity funds manage their portfolios through AI, you better have the right PE experience to be able to teach how that's going to work.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I love how you bring that full circle. And I'm glad that you're here selfishly because that's why we do the David Daily is so that we can share beautiful stories and spread and expose people to not only knowledge, but to your point, real implementation. And so leaning into that funding aspect, especially for early stage companies, what can an early stage business say? Let's say they're pre-seed, maybe seed stage, but let's just say pre-seed going into Series A. Maybe they've raised less than 5 million. What's maybe just a couple things that a founder or an executive team in an early stage startup can be thinking about to prepare themselves for more runway?
It's I think it really drives to, can you capture some early value? And I know that we think about this, and I see this with a lot of founder entrepreneurs,
Hmm.
is there's so many things we can do. And then you start digging into things, there's so much potential. It's great. Focus, focus, focus. Because that's what I see is, think big, start small. So if you want to give yourself more runway, we all know the best validation of your work is customer traction, right? So even if you can do one or two small things that bring immediate value, it shows that customers like this, they'll pay for it. That's going to extend your runway. It makes it a lot easier for early stage investors to say yes to giving you more money, or new investors coming in and pumping money into you. So don't boil the ocean. I know I'm being cliche here, but think about what's the one or two very small things you can do within 90 days, roll out there as a limited MVP that's going to build that traction for you.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me, Neil. Let's get a little bit more specific because I love the big ideas, and I'm definitely, the 100,000, foot view, bird's eye view. But I do like to get into the details just to get a little bit more specific. So if we were to say, all right, focus, 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 right? We talking about who are you serving? Who is that customer, right? Secondly, what is that product market fit? Is there actually real pain? Like, I'm writhing in pain right now. I need that painkiller. Give me a shot of Vicodin or fentanyl right now. Like, and then of course a revenue model. Like, how do I not only get traction, but how do I have repeatable, consistent traction? So when it comes to the marketing piece, or product, or like revenue roadmap, where do you sense that an early stage startup ideally really puts their energy and focus? And obviously, like, you need a team to run this as well. Like, you're not doing this alone at that stage. You have a team, whether it's maybe a couple people in a back office or a garage somewhere, maybe even at your house, maybe even you're moonlighting in corporate, because there's a lot of people who are in corporate right now. In fact, 30% of my audience is a senior level executive in Seattle at a Fortune 100 company. So how do you really focus when you have limited resources?
Discipline and
Nice.
honestly passion. I mean, I'll talk about a real story here. So there's a company called Cyrano AI, and hopefully I won't get in trouble because I know the CEO's talked about this now, at least publicly. But the CEO was a therapist and was actually helping depressed and suicidal teenagers, and firsthand was experiencing the pain point, the lack of resources, not enough people.
Hmm.
Too many teens need help, unfortunately, and it was very frustrated.
Hmm.
And they were trying to figure out there's got to be a better way of doing this. And was talking to one of his good buddies who is a computer scientist and happens to be a neurolinguist. Language is
Hmm.
like a fingerprint. It's a little unique to all of us, the way we communicate. And they were just trying to think about, and what are some things. And at the time, this was about 6-7 years ago, AI still sort of relatively new, wondering, like, is there some capabilities here that might actualize something, right? And so they started kind of going to some events. That's how I wound up meeting them, self-learning. But they had the drive and the focus, and they kind of self-taught. They experimented. It's cheap, thankfully, to experiment a little bit here. A lot of companies, Microsoft including, will give you free
Right.
credits and stuff. And so they were kind of, I'll put in air quotes, playing around, and they realized that they could probably create a tool to help therapists, and something it's easy for a patient to use, to kind of get a little deeper behind the scenes and get some insights that maybe even the patient doesn't realize about themselves, and give them an outlet to, a safe space to kind of communicate. And it took them a couple of years, but they actually built an AI engine that with as few as I think a couple hundred words, could do this whole psychographic profile on you. Could be a very powerful asset for therapists. Now, here's the challenge. They're thinking like, well, we could do this. We could help, teenagers. We could help couples, having maybe relationship issues. We could help with parent-child relation. But now they're thinking like, there's a lot of use. And they're right. There is a lot of use. But where do you go with this? And this is where the focus had to come in. And we were talking about this, and it's like, you know what? I know you started down the path of helping depressed, suicidal teenagers, but if something goes wrong, and that's what people are start thinking about, someone could die, right?
Right.
So is that really the right space to try and jump in first? Is there something more innocuous? And they had a buddy that had connections into some car dealerships, and so they actually applied it into the car dealerships to help the salespeople understand that this person, are they planning to buy a car today? They're kind of planning to buy a car within a week or a month, or they're just kind of window shopping around, so it's 6+ months out. And the worst thing that could happen is, well, they lose a sale, right? But they did that pilot for, I think it was 5 or 6 weeks, and it worked very, very well. It showed that your kind of customer traction, the owner of the dealerships was like, I want to invest in your company. You've helped our pipeline, what helped our salespeople realize which customers to focus the most on. And I think that's a little good story here, is that even, we're going to make pivots along the way. Even the initial use, that may not be the best place to initially start. So passion, focus, and then initial target customer, fast as say yes.
Yeah, that's so good. I really like this idea of focusing so much on who you really serve, especially for health tech startups or startups where there is a need to support a life critical situation, or what we would call a near death experience, a NDE. One of my good investor friends, Thomas over in France, invests in sharing and broadcasting more NDE type experiences. And what I love about that is that we have a real need, especially post-pandemic, right? We see the rise of depression, especially in women, twice as much from 2020 to 2025. There's an increase in depression drugs and prescriptions, and of course, weight loss, which also adds a little bit to the depression. On the male side, we actually see suicide rates increase by 400%. That means 4 times as many of men are actually not only just alone, but angry, upset, sad, and depressed. And so, not to be too sad on this show, but yeah, that really does speak to me, because I've had friends who have come to me in confidence, and maybe you're even watching right now and feeling that way. I think my message to you would be, you're not alone, right? And that's actually a good segue kind of into our faith section or segment of this show. I mean, you're a man of faith. I mean, I am a man of faith. I grew up very religious, no longer religious today, more so focused on a relationship. But yeah, I would love to hear your perspective on faith, and, what is your faith background? Maybe what did you grow up as a kid? And then as you grew into your adult years, how did that relationship, how did that religious practice, how did that faith kind of evolve over the years?
Well, I grew up Catholic. I went to Catholic schools. So, it's very ingrained. And it's funny when people hear that, they're like, do you have this conflict between God and science? And I'm like, why does it have to be one or the other? Right? Things can't coexist. Right. It's like corporations. You're for profit or nonprofit. No, you can do both. I don't know why we keep thinking this way. But one of the things that, with my faith and growing up that way, even early working into AI and early in the Watson days, I always kind of just always wondering, like, where are the guardrails? Where are the safety? What's going to freak people out, right? And really asking the question, should we do something, right? Just because we can do something doesn't mean we should do something. And I know that sounds a little cliche, but it's one of those things where we have to ask ourselves is, what should we automate? Where should we complement, and what should remain human? And one of the things that I learned very early on is AI actually is helping us be more human. We don't seem to realize that.
Right.
There's a research project going on in Nairobi, Kenya, and at least before the pandemic, loneliness was the biggest illness in the world. About 40% of people suffer moderate to severe loneliness. And so the thinking was, could we leverage AI? Could we create, again, like a safe space, not a substitute for human relationships, but can we create that safe space where, people feel connected to something to kind of build up the confidence to, build the human relationships? And so that kind of boiled down to, could we teach AI unconditional love? And it's like, okay, but to teach the AI system, we have to be able to teach that concept. And so we started thinking like, well, what is unconditional love? And is that different than regular love? And is there a regular love? What are the types of love? And it's like, you have the love between, two significant others. You have the love between parent and child, love between friends. And so it wound up becoming this very deep, like existential conversation about what it means to be human and the human condition, rather than a whole four-way of just, let's see if we can teach this robot unconditional love. We really took this step to explore. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that perspective. I mean, you can't have relationship or faith without that concept of love. And, you have just one word for love in the English language, which is LOVE. But when I tell my father I love you, when I tell my significant other I love you, or when I tell like a brother, like I love you, bro, like that's obviously very different. And of course, in the Greek and the Hebrew and the Spanish and some of these more, romantic languages, of course, you have 50 ways to say love. But in, English, how do you even convey the emotion behind that, let alone the language? And then you convert that to a large language model. The irony, right, is that ChatGPT is just majority romance novels and Reddit behind the scenes. So, yeah, how do you even teach some of these robots to really love and care for each other? And it starts with the human condition, right? I am often reminded of Dr. Gretchen Huizinga, who wrote a really good paper called Righteous AI out of the University of Washington Department of Education. And she came to say that there are really three types of intelligence. And this was her thesis statement in her PhD paper, right? You have divine intelligence, right, which supersedes that of human intelligence, because humans kind of have built the machine, right? Machine intelligence is always, subservient, if you will, to humans and to the divine intelligence that exists. I mean, some of us know that divine intelligence, maybe others of us don't, but it doesn't really matter where you are on that spectrum necessarily, as long as you kind of understand that there actually is an off button for AI. Like, you don't have to be afraid of emerging technology, especially when you have a power that's greater than you. And so how has that power that's greater than you, Neil, played a role into the decisions that you make on the funding front and on the emerging technology front?
I think it boils down to where the value gets created, right? And is this advancing, accelerating something, or is this just automation replacement? And I know a lot of people come in because we're used to computers being about automation, something faster, cheaper, less errors. And so that's what they think. Can I automate this process? Can I reduce headcount this way? But what I've learned, and I hope people understand, is when you do that, you're also automating the flaws. And with AI, you're doing things faster at a much greater scale, so you're amplifying those flaws. So you have to really think about what's the better way of doing this. And that's why I look at people that embrace what we call hybrid intelligence. So this is not about it's not human versus machine, it's humans using machine. So as much as AI is really good at crunching millions of variables and doing things quickly and kind of unlocking some hidden insight by examining terabytes of data, it can only do what we teach it to do. And there are a lot of things that people are much better than AI, right? Handling first of a kind situations, things that require like a level of instinct, creativity, that we want to actually take our strengths and augment that with the AI capabilities. And that's what we call hybrid intelligence. And so from like an early stage investor, or even advising some of these entrepreneurs, that's my focus. If you're coming in just trying to automate something, you're not really creating any new value for people. At some point, those processes, those models are going to break. And so you got to think about not necessarily fixing something that's not broken, right? But you got to remember that what's working today isn't going to work tomorrow, right? You can't just keep the lights on.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, especially this idea of hybrid intelligence. This is, yeah, I would say it's multidimensional intelligence, right? Especially when you talk about the faith component, right? We know that we live in this dimension, but there's a whole nother dimension that we don't even understand, including that of quantum and quantum topics. And I appreciate as well that it's no longer just automation, right? Like, okay, great. Like technology can eliminate the copy paste, but the real truth is like so many of us today are still copy pasting, right? And ChatGPT recently came out with an Atlas browser. I'd highly recommend you check out the Atlas browser. What's awesome is like you can be literally on Atlas browser on your website for your book and be asking questions on the side, summarize and outline, the title here, and then copy paste it and insert it into the browser. So yeah, we're created for higher work than the copy paste, if you will. So that begs us to ask, like, okay, so how do you actually elevate into those higher workloads, those higher quality of creative capability, the imagination, the real emotional connectivity? Therapists would say that cognitive behavioral piece. What's interesting too is as you think about how the human art form is continuing to actually maybe come full loop. There's some conjecture today in December of 2025 that would say, oh yeah, maybe actually we might see the human piece come back and be more rare, more in demand than AI. I mean, we're getting this notion that, oh yeah, we know if something's been AI generated or if it's not authentic. And definitely the younger generations have a huge point in that because they grew up in the selfie generation, the filter generation, right? The is this fake? Is this real? Like, you tell me. And with deep fakes, with misinformation, I mean, we're always asking ourselves, I mean, it's kind of the human condition, like, is this real? And that is such an interesting introspective question that we won't be able to answer here because we don't have enough time. I think it was Ralph Waldo Emerson who said, had I more time or more ink, I would have written you a shorter letter. And it's funny because like back then they used literally feather pens. I have a feather pen running around here, but they had less ink. But today we have GPT where it's like infinite GPT, right? Like you almost can like, you have unlimited access to like this, like before it was Google, now it's, AI, but tomorrow it will be quantum. And so I'm really interested to hear a little bit about like your perspective on future tech, kind of as we go into this third topic, which is quantum. And you have developed an expertise here. What is even an expertise today when we're in such an early stage nascent technology? I'd kind of love to hear your perspective on like, let's define quantum. Like, what is quantum and where have you found real joy and passion in exploring quantum topics?
How much time do we have, David?
I think we have like each segment is like 15 minutes max. I mean, maybe this is a whole nother episode.
Let me set the stage first of all, right? Because a lot of people ask me like, why is there so much focus on quantum computing, neuromorphic chips, edge computing? It's because we've hit a limit on our hardware.
That's right.
Literally for 50 years, we've kind of ignored hardware. We haven't put a lot of investment into it because it's not as profitable as software. So neither right or wrong, but the problem is we never really worry about infrastructure until it doesn't work or we've hit our limit. And that's what's going on here. And so we talk about quantum computers, traditional computers, very simply 0 or 1, right? True or false, and that really represents is the electricity on or off. We're sending signals that way. Quantum computers, we're leveraging quantum mechanics, and that says that there's more than just the on or off state. It can be 0, it could be 1, it could be both at the same time, or it could be neither, right? And the way to kind of do this and synchronize this has to do with quantum entanglement. I won't go into all the science right now. We don't have enough time or anything like that. But we're effectively exponentially increasing our computing power by leveraging the model from quantum mechanics. And that's what we need, because we're literally out of computing power. We've hit the limit. If we want to be able to do more, we have to create lots of GPUs, create more data centers, all these things. Whereas we have quantum computing, radically cuts down the need for all the things that we're building today, especially as people have probably heard, we're worried about, do we have enough water and do we have enough electricity to power all these data centers and chips?
Right.
So we go into this. I love the diagram, helps explain this.
Yeah.
Right. At a limited scale, we have built a limited types of quantum computers.
Mm-hmm.
They're very unstable. That's the problem. A little vibration, a little temperature change, and the whole thing destabilizes. And they're these huge, giant computers that you're not going to be able to fit into your house. So
yeah.
When we look at this, and the work I'm trying to do is figure out, one is how do we create the stability, right? Because AI, we've improved the car, we've improved all these things, but we can't get enough gas into the engine to take, to effectively use all the horsepower we've created. That's where quantum computers come in.
Yeah, I love that. If you're watching this and you want to get a little bit more of information on quantum topics, go back to episode 7. We did a very introduction level to superposition, entanglement, and inference. So those 3 main concepts are kind of basics. I'm learning this as we go as well, which is kind of the joy in it. And I love that too. And you exactly said it right. There is a constraint on the capabilities. So we're seeing a lot of these hybrid solutions where you have quantum concepts being integrated next to classical hardware. And I always say, people asking me, what is classical hardware? It's like, hey, I have like a rack sitting in my data center, being quantum cool. Now, obviously today with NVIDIA, we have the GPU chips, right? The graphical processing unit. Who thought that was going to be really extra efficient at mathematical computations, gaming, and crypto? Like, the NVIDIA guys, I think they got super lucky in hitting 5 trillion in valuation. But when you see more quantum concepts, even Amazon with their Brecker is looking at last mile. So, how do you, if superposition does exist and I could superimpose and teleport your delivery to like your desk at some point in time, very energy efficiently. I mean, those are some very interesting and unique concepts. So yeah, I think that's pretty fascinating to just share that. Like, pick a narrow vertical, right, inside that quantum technology space, whether it's quantum hardware, quantum intelligence, quantum engineering, quantum physics, quantum mechanics, and dive deeper in that. Now, you're actually a strategic advisor, and you're actually making yourself available for this, Neil. So tell me a little bit about how you advise startups, and kind of what does that typically look like for you?
It's all about, I always say it's always about value and helping them focus. But there's an interesting recent story I'll share with everybody, that there's a startup called Tello, and they're really into like digital twins, particularly for education, like being able to teach skills like math, playing chess. Again, where's the low-hanging fruit is, helping influencers be able to create more content. Now, this company, it's not just like the pure raw technology, but this company was actually started by some guys that are Hollywood producers and directors. And people that see their stuff actually love it, because it looks more lifelike. It's not like kind of herky-jerky, or looks like the body language is in a loop. They know how to create an experience. But they're also what's the right market, helping those things, but they're also using obviously a lot of computing resources that makes them very expensive. And so how do you improve your business model, your revenue model? And that's one of the areas we were talking about, actually edge computing, that you really need to always be connected to the internet and, effectively rendering a lot of these things. If you can have some of that live on the hardware, right? Edge computing, you could cut down your GPU compute needs. And that's where they partner up more with and rely on their very smart technical team. They were actually able to reduce their compute use by 80%, David, which radically dropped their costs, COGS, and made them a lot more price attractive for customers. And so they're using this foray into like celebrity influencers to show the traction, and now build this out. I know they're actually talking with a few educational institutions about now leveraging this technology, because even for public schools, it's suddenly very cost effective with this technical change and business model change to actually use their solution. And so that itself obviously has been a journey, but have the vision, then understand the steps to make it there. That's one of the things I actually help people understand. And so part of it, I always talk about part of it is people, the biggest challenge, but you have to think about also process and technology. But that should drive the people buy-in, acceptance, usage.
Yeah, I love that. I just am thinking about so many different ways we could apply this. But what I'm really hearing you say, Neil, is that if you're a startup or a founder, or you've had an invention, or maybe you're actually scaling to Series B or Series C, and you're looking for a strategic advisor, someone who can maybe help you, the first thing we'd recommend, right, is go get that book, right? Because this is your third book, which is just fascinating to me. Tell us a little bit about why you decided to write this book and why now.
I've seen the questions people ask morph over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of went from why are you trying to kill humanity by creating Skynet to my first book, which is, well, what exactly is AI? What can it do, not do? And if I'm not technical, how do I learn? To the second book was more about leadership. How do I create the culture? I mean, this third book is actually focused on, I know I need to do something. How do I figure that out? And then how
Right.
do I actually go actualize that? How do I make that happen? And this really talks about as a very tactical playbook, how you can go through this journey and figure it out. These are the things. This is how you figure out what you should be doing with AI. Here's how you figure out where the low-hanging fruit is and build your roadmap. Here's the approach to either internally or partnering with other people, finding advisors for implementation, and then most importantly, the adaptation. How do I teach the AI my way of doing business, my processes, my data, so that it becomes that high energy intern, that it becomes part of my business. And because what we're seeing is we're all talking about, we live in hyperchange, things are changing very quickly. We experience 100 years worth of change in 10 years. So how do I create better adaptability and agility in my organization? And I need AI to be a complement to what my people are doing to support, well, that speed. And that's what the book really focuses on, is this journey from soup to nuts. So wherever you are on your journey, it'll tell you, okay, help you understand, here's where you are, and these are the next steps you should be taking to be successful.
Yeah, I love that idea of how do you take the next step to be successful in your journey? And obviously, you're well accomplished, and we appreciate you joining this show. And I'll just say this for those who are watching or viewing, if you could go give Neil a like on Instagram, on Facebook, on his website, on LinkedIn, he's all over. We really appreciate that you've been on the show. And I wanted to ask, what is the best way for people to stay connected with you if they're looking to maybe learn a little bit more about you, or maybe some of the partnerships that you've had? What would be that best way to stay connected?
I mean, the simplest thing is to go to my website, which is just my name, neilsahota.com. So it serves as a portal. There's links to other resources as you take this journey. You want to learn more, you want more case studies and stuff. So it's also got links to my socials. I publish a very popular LinkedIn newsletter and set of Substack articles and playbooks. So if you're looking for more tactical things for your industry or your job role, this is your one-stop shop resource. And of course, there's a contact form on there. So if you have questions or you're looking for some help, or you want to bounce an idea off, I'm always happy to provide feedback. So feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah, I love it. I'm really actually curious too. Like, how did you become a UN advisor? And is it true that you actually speak another language or more than just one language?
Thanks to AI, I kind of can. I
Nice.
know I've been to 100. I've been to 108 countries, and
Wow.
so I've picked up in a few places enough to get by.
Right.
But the UN advisor, it's one of those things you don't plan for things; they kind of happen. You're open to
Right.
opportunity, which all of us as entrepreneurs should be. But I have a very good friend, Stephen Baraki, that known him a long time, help each other out time to time, and it was over a decade ago. He called me up to thank me for a last minute thing I helped out for him, and he's like, "Hey, by the way, I sit on this committee, and there's this big conference going on. The world leaders, the ambassadors are going to be there. That would be where they're talking about the Sustainable Development Goals and voting on them." And he's like, they want to know more about AI and what to do about it. And I put your name forward as a speaker. And I thought he was yanking my chain, David. In all honesty, I thought he was yanking my chain.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, right, Stephen, whatever.
He's
He's like,
messing
no,
with
then
you.
you
He's
have to
like, you're
sell
going to be a
them.
UN advisor. Wait till
Yeah,
Neil finds out
no.
about this.
But he's like, no, I didn't have to even sell them. Two of the guys have heard you speak before and seen some of your work with for social good. They would love to have you. I totally did not believe him. And the next day, I have an email from the Secretary General's office with a formal invitation and everything. I'm like, whoa! And so
Yeah.
that's how
Wow.
I wound up happening.
Yeah. I love hearing stories like that just because it's like I've had buddies do not the same thing, but similarly. And it's like, are you messing with me? Are you, ripping my chain like you said? Are you like, is this AI? Is this even a real, deep fake? And it's just so funny to hear that. I heard you say something about 108 countries, and I'm not sure if you saw this in the show notes, but we have a special segment called Beyond the Bag, right? So we have funding, faith, right, and future tech. Well, we also have full-time fun, and the Beyond the Bag is literally where I grab my bag, which is right next to me, and I pull something out of my bag and share with the audience what I carry with me when I travel. I've been full-time traveling for the past 2 years. And so today on the Beyond the Bag segment, I'm going to pull out this little glass. I actually stopped drinking completely. So this is a beautiful whiskey glass that has a little king icon on it, and it helps me stay hydrated. I do actually carry this with me in my small backpack. I'm mostly traveling with just a backpack. I've been to all 50 states, actually writing a book about that to share, that journey with all 50 states. And I've only been to about 30 countries. So I'm excited to get to maybe 50 next year, maybe 100 sometime in my life, not sure, but it is really wonderful. And I was going to ask you if you have your bag near you or you have something that you always take with you, whether it's something metaphorical like an idea or if it's something like an actual physical product. Like, what can we find in Neil's travel bag when he's going to these 108 countries?
I don't think there's so much that I take with me. I travel light, but because I am home.
I love this. We're gonna get real time some stuff from Neil's
I
bag. I
keep this
absolutely love this. This
not,
is this is
not on my
going down.
mantle, but one of my favorite countries is Australia. And so this is actually a nice indigenous tribe was nice enough to actually make this boomerang for me. So it's all hand painted carved, but they actually taught me how to throw a boomerang. And
Wow.
so I actually have a few different boomerangs. I don't throw this one because it's just too nice.
Right.
But I will actually go to the big park near where we live from time to time and just throw my boomerang around for some exercise.
I love that. So you can throw your boomerang and actually catch it? Like,
Yeah.
that's what a boomerang is. Like when they say what comes around goes around?
Yeah, but keep in mind there are different types of boomerangs. Not all boomerangs come back. So
Okay.
you find yourself in Australia and you're thinking like, I remember what that guy was talking about. make sure you get the version. There's a little indent that's carved out on the back side of the boomerang that actually allows it to spin back. You got to make sure that's there. You want that
Nice.
kind of boomerang. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious, how often do you throw your boomerang and it didn't come back? You're like, I wish I had a dog or a kangaroo or, you know, someone to help me, like a kid or a significant other. I don't know, somebody to help me get my boomerang.
Well, it takes practice, and you kind of throw it like a pitcher does at an angle.
Yeah.
But just obviously, if you start learning, they'll teach you in Australia. Make sure no people are around. And as I learned during the pandemic and the lockdown, tell the park rangers what you're doing, so they don't freak
Right.
out.
That's so funny. Yeah, Neil, this has been such a wonderful show. I'm so grateful for you. If you folks are joining in live, or maybe you've been on the show before, go check Neil out. He's got a wonderful website. And not only that, he's written some really phenomenal material on this activation guide. I think I'm going to grab this book myself just to be a supporter in the community. And Neil, this has been such a pleasure. And we got to see your boomerang from Australia. How fun is that? How often do you show that on podcasts, right?
Very, very rarely. You're the first, David.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Frontier boomerangs. Here we come. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We really appreciate you, Neil. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for joining. I see that we have a significant audience on Twitter and X, so thank you for that. Of course, Neil's platform. Thank you for all of Neil's friends, family, partner, business friends. Until next time, we will see you bright and early tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. New York time. See you tomorrow, my friends.